One day, as Jessica Lynn Keane waited for the bus, she was attacked by a ruthless and sadistic predator. Her body would only be found 48 hours later, about 20 miles from her home. The crime scene portrays the unimaginable horror she experienced in her final moments. All the odds were against her as she struggled for her life in the dark, while her killer was on her trail. Her brutal murder would go unsolved for almost 20 years, but determined detectives were able to catch her killer by chance using DNA. Hello, and welcome back to Mystery Detective. Please support my channel by subscribing and hitting the bell icon for more crime cases. Today's case takes us to Columbus, Ohio. Columbus is a busy city with plenty of entertainment options. There are numerous eateries, shops, bars, concert venues, art galleries, and other establishments in the Short North Arts District. The Gallery Hop, which takes place on the first Saturday of every month, is a fantastic way to see what Columbus has to offer in terms of artistic talent. The North Market, a public market with vendors selling a variety of local cuisine, fresh produce, gifts, and more, is also located in the Short North neighborhood. Columbus is home to a large number of parks and museums, including the Scioto Mile Riverfront Park, the Columbus Zoo, and Aquarium, the Columbus Museum of Art, and the Center of Science and Industry. The entire year is filled with special occasions and festivals. But in the fall, football is the region's way of life. The Ohio State Buckies are the city's pride and joy. Though the city might seem all safe, fun and bubbling now, it wasn't always like that in the 1990s. In fact, the homicide rate and violent attacks were high in the year 1991. Jessica Lynn Keane was born on September 24, 1975, to Rebecca and James Keane. She was well loved by her parents and basically had everything a child could ever ask for. The love, care, and the peace of mind at home reflected in her academics while growing up. Teachers simply called her a good student. In the year 1991, 15 years old Jessica Lynn Keane was an honor roll student in Westland High School. She was gifted, ambitious, and loved by her family. Jessica became a popular cheerleader and a talented performer. She was well known and well liked by friends. According to her mother, Rebecca, Jessica had a lot of dreams and goals. Jessica, idealistically, would have loved to have been a singer, an actress. I guess, realistically, Jessica loved animals and wanted to go to college to be a zoologist, Rebecca said. However, Jessica's smooth life and the beautiful relationship she shared with her parents came crashing down in March 1991, and this had to do with the teenager's love life. Jessica had fallen in love with an 18-year-old school dropout, Sean Thompson. They started dating, and their relationship was new and exciting. But, according to Jessica's mother, the love affair began to distract Jessica from her academic life. Also, in an effort to spend more time with the person she was infatuated with, Jessica even quit cheerleading and would often skip school to see Sean. This made her grades decline drastically. Just like every parent who wants the best for their child, Jessica's parents became worried and forbade her from seeing Sean Thompson ever again, at least until her grades came up enough for her to get a scholarship into college. Jessica was in love and wouldn't listen to her parents. She continued to sneak out of the house to see Sean. When she began to threaten her mother about moving out of the house, she knew she had to put her daughter back on track before it gets too late. At a point, Jessica and her mother's arguments got worse. They both realized they needed some time to let off some steam. They then agreed that Jessica should spend 2 weeks at the Huckleberry House live-in counseling facility for troubled teenagers. While there, she was to attend therapy sessions in an effort to get her back on the right track. Jessica complied as required, and on March 15, 1991, her live-in stay at the facility was almost over when things started to go very wrong. She called Sean Thompson the day before she was scheduled to return home, but it seemed she probably didn't get the response she was hoping for. According to those who witnessed the phone call, Jessica and Sean got into an argument over the phone. At a point they broke up and, On ending the call, Jessica was said to have been very visibly upset. Afterwards, Jessica, who was devastated by the situation, told her friends she was going to the mall and then made her way to the bus stop close to Huckleberry House to wait for the next bus. Nobody would ever again see the 15 years old alive after that. It was getting dark, and Jessica failed to return to the Huckleberry House facility. Her friends and the staff at the facility waited for her, but when she didn't show up, they reached out to her parents to inform them what had transpired. She was eventually reported missing to the police, and a massive search for her ensued. However, the search came to an end 48 hours later when her body was sadly discovered at the Foster Chapel Cemetery, about 20 miles from the Huckleberry House. Jessica had duct tape wrapped around her hands and mouth and was otherwise naked, save for a bra and one sock. The teenager had been brutally beaten and raped before being fatally struck in the head by a gravestone that was discovered nearby. Strangely, Jessica still had her wristwatch and ring on her. But her beloved necklace, inscripted with the word "taken," which was a gift from her boyfriend, was gone. After starting their investigation, the police concluded that Jessica had likely been sexually assaulted between 2 and 4 hours before she passed away, due to the semen at the crime scene. After a thorough inspection of all the hints and clues at the cemetery, the investigator in charge of the case, Special Agent Greg Costas, came to the heartbreaking conclusion that Jessica Lynn Keane had been abducted and held captive in a car, but she had only just tried to elude her captor. She then ran across a country road in fear for her life and entered a cemetery where, based on a knee print in the ground and a misplaced sock, she may have attempted to conceal herself behind a gravestone. Unfortunately, when she thought her attacker had lost track of her, she fled her hiding spot and crashed into a fence post in the dead of night as she attempted to flee and reach a nearby farmhouse. Since the farmhouse was lit up, she intended to run towards it, believing someone was there to save her from the monster running after her. Sadly, she couldn't make it there on time as her great fall alerted her attacker, who later discovered her and killed her with a 70-pound gravestone. This discovery devastated her family, friends, and the police. They couldn't fathom the horror she must have experienced as she tried so hard to stay alive. According to Special Agent Costas, he was adamantly determined to use all of his resources to identify the killer of the promising teenager and solve the murder. "I've never been so passionate about anything that I've ever worked on in my life." The thought of this young girl, 15 years old, who had such a bright future, being murdered in such a horrible, horrible fashion, you cannot help but want to do everything humanly possible to find out who did this. Agent Costas said, "Rebecca Keane was clearly mortified by the terrible crime and haunted by the extreme fear her daughter must have experienced while attempting to find safety in the pitch-black cemetery. Everything I tried to prevent, her life from being ruined, happened anyway," a devastated Rebecca told the media. As the investigation progresses, sheriffs in Madison County focused on Sean Thompson, Jessica's boyfriend, but they discovered that he wasn't in Columbus when Jessica was murdered. Sean and a few of his friends had left for Florida. However, they were eventually sent back to Ohio. The police collected Sean's DNA and interrogated him and his friends in great detail, but it was quickly determined that he and his friends were not a party to the incident. This was because the DNA from the semen sample at the crime scene did not match Sean's or even his friends'. They were, however, exonerated of all charges. Though for the investigators a whole week had passed and the search for the actual murderer or murderers had become fruitless. Even so, Jessica's mother's nightmares about her passing never stopped. What they did to her, the fear that Jessica felt she would do anything to get away. And I can feel her heartbeat running through the cemetery. I can feel the deep breathing she was probably doing when she knelt behind the tombstone. I can hear her praying, and I realize that that was the worst thing that I believe anyone could go through, Rebecca said. The investigation became unproductive gradually. Investigators, however, were unable to forget the grisly murder that had occurred on their doorstep and they continued to periodically review the evidence in the hope that new information might come forward someday. At last, it actually did in 2008. After rerunning the semen sample from the crime scene through the system, Madison County Sheriff Jim Sabin and Special Agent Greg Costas found the hit on CODIS that they were looking for. It belonged to Marvin Lee Smith Jr., who was quickly apprehended and sent to Ohio to face allegations of impermissible sexual conduct. Marvin Lee Smith was on bail when he met Jessica Keane in 1991, having served 9 years in prison for assaulting 2 women in Columbus. Marvin Smith was required to submit his DNA as a formality when he was released from jail, after serving time yet again in 2000. Unfortunately, it was never noted as being related to the Keane case, and it wasn't until Sheriff Sabine and Special Agent Costas had a lucky break that a match to Jessica's killer could be established. Marvin Lee Smith confirmed in court in 2009 that he had abducted Jessica after seeing her by chance at the bus stop on that March day in 1991. This confirmed the police's initial suspicions. To the surprise of the jury, he described how he had indeed pursued Jessica through the dark cemetery before eventually getting a hold of her and killing her with a gravestone, using such force that the stone had to split into 2. As part of a plea agreement, Smith admitted guilt to first-degree murder while avoiding the death penalty. He will be held at the Lebanon Correctional Institution in Warren County, Ohio, until at least March 2038 after receiving a sentence of 30 years to life in prison. However, those who reside in Columbus and elsewhere will undoubtedly be hoping that this dangerous person stays exactly where he is for life after the revelation of the nightmare murder that he committed.